Yeah, you Nobody's, Chris, or anybody is checking in?
No.
From the Zoom? Okay. Great.
5:47.
I'd like to call the meeting to order of the City of Monona, Missouri County Board of Appeals, Thursday, December 16th, 2021. Let's see who's here, so those might need to call the roll. I'm assuming, you said there's nobody here to make appearances?
No, we have a couple
Oh, you
received comments.
Okay.
But no, everybody else here is
Okay.
associated with the application.
Okay, great. Do you want to share those comments now, or do you want to wait till?
I can share them now.
Okay.
So these comments, we had two letters that were submitted from neighbors. I shared these with the zoning board ahead of time. The first was Brett and Shannon Hayden, 408 West Dean Avenue, expressing their support for the variance at 411 West Dean. Talked about the design and working with a local architect to work with the lot. It holds the architecture of the current home, smaller impact on neighboring properties, and they were in support. The second was from John Surdick and Carrie Dickinson at 4606 Shore Acres Road. Again, expressing their support for it. The renovations, the need for the accommodation given the narrow lot. They were very supportive, unable to make the meeting, but wanted to let the board know they endorse the thoughtful updates and have no objections to the setbacks.
I have copies of the Hayden letter. She sent me one. Both John and Shannon. I actually gave them the PDF files of the site plan and the overhead so they could see the setback measurements as well. And interestingly, Shannon worked in another county, principally in zoning, so she kind of knew a lot of the items going on.
Great.
So, yeah.
Great. So can I have a motion to approve the minutes from November 18th?
Move to approve.
Second.
Any corrections, changes? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, so we're headed to the number 5, public hearing with Malcolm Bell at 411 West Dean Ave. This was requesting a variance from Monona Municipal Code of Ordinances, section 480-24D4A, street yard setbacks, and 480-24D4B, side yard setbacks, for the purpose of building a new attached garage to existing property. Case number Z-012-2021. So with that, would you like to, you want to go ahead, or do you want me to speak?
I think it must be applicant.
Yeah, okay, go ahead.
Well, I'm Malcolm Crown.
Welcome.
Thanks for meeting tonight.
Mhm.
I bought that house in '92, be 30 years ago, coming up this May. And I was early 30s then, and I'm early 60s now. And so I lived there alone for until probably about 2009 or so. My girlfriend, who then became my wife, moved in. Up until that point, I had one car in the garage and a bunch of windsurf gear and a bike. And at some point, I bought a second vehicle, a pickup, to put some of that gear in and park in the street, or else park underneath the tree at the side of the driveway during the snow season. And so Mandy moved in about 2009. Before that, I had done windows on the place. It was built in 37. When I got it, it had, not to belabor it too much here, but it had single pane windows that were metal framed, and it had a caulked in, they didn't open, they were painted shut, and it had a caulked in storm window on the inside, very thick blinds. So slowly but surely, every few years, I would rustle up some money and so did the windows on top, windows on bottom, doors. After Mandy moved in, we finally replaced the original boiler, which was coal fired, and it was switched over to gas at some point. But it was probably about the size of a third of this coffee table big, and then probably about 5 feet tall. It was a beast. So about 2020 or so, I was looking at retirement, and it's like, oh, should we move somewhere? Should we just get a condo so when we travel, we don't have to deal with lawn and that sort of stuff. But more and more as we came around to it, it's like, she loves the location. We really enjoy her neighbors, and her sister's close. So we kind of decided, well, I guess we're going to stay. Why don't we make it so we got a little more space? You have stuff scattered in the shed and back, down in another storage shed. Garage is barely big enough for her car and some extra stuff. So she really wanted a new, bigger kitchen. My argument was that the Harmony Bar is a kitchen the size of a phone booth, and they got great food. What do you need a bigger kitchen for? But it kind of fell on deaf ears. So we decided to see what we could do about changing that around. And that's how we came up with these plans. And Jeannie, the architect behind me, submitted a few different designs without getting too complicated. On the application, it asked about previous variances. And Doug had showed me, and I did find the picture here, that was dated from 1983, and it said the Kane residence. So Mark Kane, who is one of the TV anchors at that point, was the resident there. And actually, when I bought the house in 92, people were saying, oh, the last 3 marriages there all ended in divorce. I said, well, I'm not married, so I guess that's one thing in my favor. So I don't really know if there was a variance given at that point, and I kind of put on the application, but I would assume that there probably had to be, unless there were no variances in 83. This house, as I outlined in my letter, was built in 37. I put in a picture in there that had an aerial view from 37. Looked like gravel road, certainly didn't look paved. There was no gas lines, there was no sewer, there was no curbs. So where the house sits now is where it sat in 37. And the garage right now is 13 feet from the front lot line. And the main house, I think it's 23, and then they added on room in 83, 85, that general time, I think is about 19 feet. So to maintain the 30-foot setback of a garage, you'd probably be pretty much in the Cervix backyard almost. And so as I proceeded, and I talked to Doug, who gave me a lot of good information. Since it was a corner lot, it was like, okay, we got about 3 feet from that back corner of either of the 2 neighbors. And kind of went about it that way. And this is designed, there's 6 feet from one neighbor, 3 feet from the other. And then I discovered that, well, since it's attached, it should be more like 7 feet. And John Surdick is the one who has the lot line that is within 3 feet. And he actually got to see the PDF and looked at all the pictures, and I showed him kind of, this is where the fence that we have between us is right here. And it's going to be, and he goes, oh, that's no problem. It doesn't really bother him. So from that standpoint, I've got acceptance. Casey, who lives on the other lot line, he and Alex moved out in July to the city of town of Oregon, but his in-laws are living in that house right now. So I don't know where the letter went for either of those, but I had talked to Casey as long as almost 2 years ago that I thought about putting a garage back in the corner where the little shed sat. He didn't really have any qualms about it. He had a big garage in back at his property. He had like crawler Jeeps, motorcycle, shop, and some 4-seater bicycle he rode at Burning Man, all back in there. So he thought it was kind of a cool thing to put back there. And then the in-laws there don't really have any problems about it, but I would think they'll probably end up selling that property sometime in the next year or 2. But we don't know who's going to move in. So essentially, it kind of already violates the setbacks from the front side. And with the current lot dimensions as far as hardship. It makes it awful hard to fit anything garage-wise in the back that's any significant size to it without encroaching on the lot lines to some degree. And Jeannie's come up with a pretty nice design that kind of maintains the architectural integrity of it. My idea was just a huge white box that maximized volume, was almost 14 feet tall. You could build a second mezzanine in there and have almost 2 stories of storage and all kinds of calmer minds prevail to come up with a design that kind of mimics the house a little bit. And I also thought a little bit about the community impact. We wouldn't be parking in the street half the time. We get the vehicles out of the drives as well too. So reading through the kind of the statutes or the laws as they were, it sounds like to trying to claim the hardship thing, I think you'd have to come down to the lot size, maintaining the architectural integrity, and the other fact that it kind of was a pre-existing structure that already kind of gives a little restriction to where you can go with building on this addition here. I think you got is that the one I printed up? I think it's got the pictures of like the 37 on it.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I mean, it's not technically a, it's not technically a landmark home, but it is listed in the homes of Monona there. There's a few more of them down kind of on the end of Crosswoods and Winnequa. And there's a few in Shorewood Hills too that I haven't really dug into, but look very similar in there. All on Camelot Street behind the elementary school there. 3 of them in a row where all the windows meet on the corner. They're all kind of flat roof. And square sided brick.
Great, thank you. No?
Thanks. So just as kind of a, in addition to what the applicant had said, I did meet with the architect to kind of discuss options here on the lot. You can see with it being a corner lot, just from sort of a zoning perspective, both yards towards the street are going to be deemed street yards, and then the 2 yards behind the house. So effectively the backyard, back of the house, they're both going to be rear yards. So as mentioned, that's going to be 7 feet setbacks, not 3 feet. So that's the reason for the 2 variances. There's the street yard as well as the rear yard setback request. I did speak about sort of some of the options here as to where, conceptually any sort of garage could go. I think to the west was challenging just to have a lot line cuts, as well as any additional curb cuts, things like that. I'm sure Director of Public Works would rather they be away from the curb, away from the corner. So we spoke about that a little bit. And then just of note here as well is the shed, as shown on the survey, the plan of survey, is currently non-conforming just with its location. That would be consolidated and taken out as part of this project, which I believe, I think it's 0.4 foot in this one
It's practically
direction.
right up the lines.
And 1.2 on the other, so that would be consolidated as well.
Was there when I bought the place.
Yeah.
Still standing.
So we had definitely spoken sort of in the conceptual level as to how to sort of try and address this, what could fit, within the confines, or for a way for it to be sort of minimally invasive to the setbacks. I think some of that is shown in the way that the garage is stepped back a little bit as well from the 30 foot. It is still seeking a variance, but it sort of minimizes the ask there. So in total, the street yard setback is going to be just over 4 feet is what's being requested. And then there's also going to be because one of the planes of the rear of the garage is only 3 feet, so that would be a 4 foot setback as well. All other elements, the wall coverage, the height, all comply. So they're the 2 pieces that are being discussed. Thanks.
Back in front, essentially.
Yes,
Correct.
All right,
I'm just here to answer questions. If anyone has any questions, I think Malcolm did a terrific job of addressing them. Well, I will say that we did try a number of different designs. And it kept coming back to attaching it to the house, keep it, and then sort of playing with the plane of it. So there was a lot of consideration for the design, and there's just so little space to work with.
My wife didn't want to bring it a lot further forward because there's one corner window there in the back family room. She didn't want that view cut off. The back family room has a scupper also right kind of central on it that will need to be incorporated too. So if you brought the whole garage much further forward, then you have to drain from the family room onto the garage somehow.
well, as we already know, this is an area variance and use variance. So we'll follow that one.
I didn't hear, I'm sorry.
I said, as we all know, this is an area variance, not a use variance, so we'll follow that line.
Can we just jump to consideration?
Oh, yeah, sorry. I thought you had already. Yeah, so let's close the public hearing. And move to item number 6, consideration of action. Malcolm Canal, 411 West Main Ave, requesting a variance from Monona Code of Ordinances, section 480-24D, 4A, street yard setbacks, and 480-24D, 4B, side yard setbacks for the purpose of building a attached garage to the existing property, case number Z-012-202.
So in your letter
Yeah.
asking for the variance, you say that you've got this shed, no basement,
Yeah. it's built on
and
a
an
slab.
offsite storage,
Yeah,
and so this
so the
would
idea,
alleviate all of that?
so it's built to look like a 3-car garage, but in essence, it's going to be a place to hang the outdoor yard work equipment, or recreational equipment, as well as the contents of the storage garage, which used to have a 3rd car, but we've decided 2 is enough. And bicycles, which are in the back shed right now, and some are down the other as well too. A copy of your. It's just this.
Doug, what's it, so this is like a 2/10, just like a little smaller than a normal yard, and what most are what, 0.24, and this is a 0.2 acre?
In terms of the overall lot
The
size.
yard, yeah, the size
Yeah, I
of the
think
lot.
I think it's 0.2 or 0.91 something. I think it's on the
It's on this side,
I
so-
thought I saw.
Yeah, it's 0.2 acres.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, so I wouldn't say that is out of keeping in terms of lot size. I think there's a proportion to the west of the house with the arc there, the radius that's shown on the survey does make that a difficult area maybe to access from the street, I would say. But that's probably the main and sort of the narrowness of it. But being 56, that's on the smaller side. You know, we do have some 40s, 45s on the lake in terms of width. But I would say mainly it's the consideration that to the west, at least for a curb cut and a driveway would be a little challenging.
So are you taking that big tree down and making a driveway that goes to the garage?
So
The
the
new
the new
garage?
garage driveway will be closed up, the big tree. We've gone back and forth and it's a nice tree, but it spits cones and needles over everything as
This
well
part, this
as,
tree.
yeah, as well as trying to control drainage at the front of the house. So it's gonna end up going. And there's some lilacs right next to it too that most likely are gonna, for the most part, go. And then along the lot line between the side of the garage, the east lot line, there's a big mulberry tree that will need to go, and there's some honeysuckles in there that are just kind of weedy. So the yard there will get terraced and probably some plantings will go in there.
So the garage is gonna go to.
Yeah, so this is there's a chain link fence right here. that You can kind of. You can't quite see in that picture there. Yeah, it runs right. Right here. The
So the garage will go.
so we won't be able to see that house at the garage in place.
Oh, yeah, I see the fence.
Does the lot being on the corner significantly impact the building envelope?
I would say the way the ordinance works is you do have the sort of difficulty or the challenge of the two street yards, you know, per the zoning, but you get some relief with the two side yards. You know, the fact that if there's 2 yards, if there's 3, then the furthest away from the house would be a rear yard. You know, if there's kind of 5 faces to the lot, if that makes sense. But when there's 2 like this, they get the relief and it's only a 7-foot setback. So there's no rear yard setback. So I think it's from the ordinance perspective, I think that somewhat cancels out. But I think with this, it's maybe it's a little bit.
What would happen if you had to, if the variance wasn't, what size garage could you put there? If you didn't have a variance, would you be able to get a car?
If you would,
Is it deep enough?
it's barely deep enough. You could probably put a garage, but then we wouldn't have enough space for the storage. So we'd probably maintain that off-site storage and maybe probably still try it's more the depth, actually. You can make it long, but you still need.
Yeah, that's what I see here,
Front
is
to
I think you
back.
have enough space if you move away from the house, but I think it's the
Another
depth needs to be the issue.
design had the garage completely separate.
Mhm.
And you could go up a few feet on that, but then that would kind of interfere with the architectural integrity.
Mhm.
Can you speak a little bit more to if you didn't have this, what the hardship would be to you if you weren't able to do this?
We would have to, well, right now we're moving the kitchen from one spot into the current garage, which probably doubles or triples the size of the kitchen. And so we'd have to maintain the current garage, not do much of a remodel of the kitchen, and probably continue with the offsite shed, continue with the backyard shed, continue parking in the street half the time. They just end up thinking of just selling it at that point. And have to find somewhere else, but
You know, what the, is there such a thing, or any of you guys know what a, sort of, maybe, what the typical, there is such a thing as a typical length of garage
At the depth.
depth?
The depth at the very minimum would be 20 feet, but also we're building this in, with a brick veneer. So add another 8 inches on or so 21 feet would be the absolute minimum. And if you had any sort of a full-size SUV, you would need something longer or pickup.
The side yard setback is what?
So the side or the rear yard, the two facing the neighbors is going to be 7 feet.
it's 9 on the, from the east lot line, middle of the gray houses.
Where in his 4? Is it 4 over? That's what we're looking
Yeah,
at?
Yeah.
the
Okay,
variance
it's
is
4 in the front, 4 in the back.
Yeah, about 4.
Yeah.
I'm actually struggling with the unique physical property limitation portion of this myself. And I'm stuck on, usually we're focused on number 1. But, and I don't know if I'm convinced on number 1 completely, but right now, unique physical property limitation, because specifically need for a larger garage, those types of factors aren't legitimate factors under that factor. And we have multiple factors that we have to, go through a 3-step analysis: unnecessary hardship, unique physical property limitation, and then whether or not it harms the public interest. And just as a general starting point, the desire just to have a larger garage doesn't meet that factor. And I think it's a well-contemplated plan. Don't get me wrong. I can tell a lot of consideration and planning and care went into trying to come up with these plans and keep the aesthetic of the building as it is, because it's a beautiful building too. But on that factor, I'm just struggling to see what exactly the unique physical property limitation is.
I think the length of modern vehicles is kind of a constraint to some extent, unless we're driving smart cars. To enter directly from Dean Avenue means that there's just not that much length to the front to back part. So what else could you do? You could enter from Dean Avenue, make a 90-degree turn, and then park them facing east-west. And then you could get the length. You're going to probably take up a lot more of the green space with driveway by doing that.
There's
Permeability issues.
Yeah,
there's so much radius you need in order to do that, to get in, but
to get in, make that turn. And
I think if
So you're talking about if you were to do this,
yeah,
I'm going here.
yeah.
You don't feel like the long, narrow curved lot is unique?
I-
I'm just asking.
I'm
I
just
look
not,
at it and I thought it was.
Yeah, I was going to mention, and I didn't want to interrupt, but I felt the uniqueness of this, and I actually upgraded the house right across the street. That's still on West Dean, and that wasn't a horribly deep lot. It was still considerably deeper than this, and I don't think I've ever had a lot where the house is so close to the street, there is really no depth to it. And, when you back your car out, a brush, we try to have, as architects, try to have a full length of drive, so you can get out, see where you're going, and then back into the street. Here, they're in what they currently have, because the street developed around the house as opposed to every other house in the area where the street was developed and then the house was, it left no consideration for that. So it's just really, that is the uniqueness to me, and also the fact that it is, I think, a notable house in its style.
If you stop in the driveway to unload stuff, it impedes the sidewalk. You have to walk over the apron practically out in the street to get around the vehicle.
I think you don't even have to, with your property, I don't think you have to have a big, long SUV for that problem to occur, correct?
No.
Just like a regular,
Yeah,
That's true. It
regular.
happens with a Prius,
I would say the Prius I pulled up in probably has that problem.
yeah.
Would the proposed driveway have enough,
Yes, it would
Yeah.
give enough length, a car length, to be able to pull out and have sightlines.
I guess I'm struggling more with the side yard setback than the front yard setback. Because I think that a two-car garage is desirable nowadays, and if you're using the extra bay as space for storage, I'm not understanding why it couldn't be 24 feet deep instead of,
28.
right.
Yeah, and we have one door into the carpeted family room, but we don't really plan on using that. Plan to use the side door.
That door
This
more.
is a carpeted family room, so we don't think we're gonna be trumping dirt from the garage back and forth into the family room. We're gonna be principally
That
this, which will be a paved walkway to the back door. Right there's the main way in and out of the garage. So that's why we extended it that way a little bit. And this is about a 3-foot shelf, so if you take 4 feet
then you're-
down, then you're almost bumper into the back of the garage pretty much. And then you lost kind of all of that storage space back there.
And the ability to move to the next bay of the cars.
Because you're skirting around. the
Because
back.
you're pulling in that whole back, and then and a little bit of depth just gives you some of the storage along it. So it becomes hard to maneuver around from car to car from the main.
So Beth, explain which piece you're struggling with.
I'm struggling with it impeding on the 7-foot setback. I just,
Back here,
yeah.
Yeah.
Because I go by the house often enough that I've been curious how you do get cars in and out of there.
Yeah.
I would agree, I live right around the corner
Uh-huh.
and I go by it multiple times a day, so, yeah.
And I don't have any problem with asking for a 2-car garage and some extra space around the garage. I just, they're fine with the width of the garage because they're not impeding on the setback. It's just the depth is kind of, just because can't get around or it might be a tighter squeeze. I don't know, you've got that extra bay. I mean, you take the shelf out. Add it in some other places.
The storage shed we have is about the size of that bay, and it's pretty much full. So then if you
so if you keep the
So if you
storage
think of the
shed,
bay the rental storage shed we have.
Oh, okay.
So if you take the contents of that and put it into the one bay right there, that leaves the rest of the space to put that beat up yard shed in. And all of the current stuff that's also in the garage as well too.
Yeah, I certainly understand what you're saying there, but I hope you can understand that from where we're coming from. If we were to grant a variance because people have too much stuff. And I'm not meaning that in any way to be, I mean, I'm a gearhead. I totally, I mean, I don't have a basement, I don't have an attic, I have a one-car garage, and I'm an outdoor person, so I've got, I've got plenty of gear too.
That's what our garage looks like now. It's the smallest car fits in there and both sides are racks filled with gear
Right.
and there's about this much space between the back and that's
Right.
where
Right. I refer
tools and
to my
stuff,
utility room as
yeah.
my fleece closet, so I mean,
Right.
I'm appreciative, but what I'm saying is that if we were to grant a variance based on the volume of stuff that people have, as the, as the difficulty would be, I mean, it's just not a basis by which we're not, and which isn't to say that I'm not sympathetic to you having a lot of stuff, but it's just to say, that
Well, it's not a factor we can consider.
it's not a factor we can consider, right? Which is exactly why the statute, and this is, I'm sure you know from talking to Doug, this is all statute based. It's not that we're,
Yeah.
And the statute, as he said, specifically says, for a larger garage. It's, the circumstance, the applicant has a growing family, elderly parents or desire for a larger garage are not legitimate factors. I mean, it's spelled it out as clear, so.
To your point, what about a two-car garage? Making this a smaller, that's what your point was?
I think the point was that
Or taking.
if there's gonna be an
Shallower.
empty bay, can we take 4 feet off the
Yeah.
shallower? Right, I think that's what the point
That's
was,
what
Right.
and you're leaning towards maybe granting the
Street set.
the street setback, but not the side
yard.
Keep on, I say it's a rear yard setback, but it's a side yard setback in this case.
you do that, you can certainly gain the volume for storage back by extending it. It's 9 feet from the east property line. Extend it,
Widen it.
Widen it,
widen it that way and also make it taller as well too.
Yeah, I think that was another thing. I think you've got some flexibility there. You're not asking for a 20-foot deep garage that's impeding on both setbacks. Which, Bo, you're gonna really surprise everyone with the garage. Just going from so small to like,
It's actually a really long house.
yeah.
You don't see about half of it because it's behind that big tree and some lilacs back there.
Yeah, I
They're
think-
right up to the sidewalk. But if I'm in that back room and the doorbell rings, it's probably 20 seconds to get to the doorbell, and hey, there's no one there.
10-foot pole and open the door.
And putting a garage on isn't gonna make it any shorter, obviously.
No.
Well, we're gonna be able to. They'll have a shorter distance to the front door now.
At least we can
Changes.
hand park out in front of the garage.
Yeah,
Interesting solution.
Make it happen.
Nothing is straightforward with that house.
It sounds like you are.
Sure, I'll make a motion to approve the street yard setback. Deny the side yard setback.
That,
As a, in reasoning.
yes, if you could walk through the reasoning on that, that would be great.
I think the shape and location of the lot is a hardship. And that having two-car garage is something that's beneficial to the public interest as far as going forward. So what am I not meeting? I don't think I've ever made a motion before.
If you just were to speak to number 2, the physical property limitations.
shape of it.
Physical property limitations, then you would have all 3 covered.
Right, I think that the depth or the volume of the garage is not, that's needing the storage space because of having too much stuff doesn't meet the hardship requirements.
I think, can I help you a little bit?
Yeah,
If that's okay, am I allowed to do that? I also think for the unique physical property limitations, as you said, the neighborhood was built around this particular house. And so trying to get into the driveway, the garage, because of also the shape and the narrowness of the lot, I would say meets number 2. For it's the street yard setback, right, that we're,
Right.
that you're wanting to.
Right.
Right.
Good. I think that's, I think that reference, for me anyway, works better from the standpoint of it's pointing out why we're approving the variance that we are. So in combination, it works.
If you brought the whole thing 4 feet forward, would then meet the variance on the back lot line, but it would be 4 feet closer to the sidewalk, but it still would not be closer than some of the existing structure. You maintain the depth of it
Would you be able to get a car parked
in front of the
garage?
garage that way.
Former V, have to look at the site plan.
In order to address that.
I have a motion on the floor. Do I have a second?
Second.
You second? Yep. Okay. Other than-
Oh,
So
I do have a question about the depth. I'm just looking at the last page. Is this the scale? I mean, it looks like the little VW, like half that fits in the proposed garage. Is this what I'm looking at?
the last page.
The last page, the garage. I mean, is this the scale? Is this like,
The question, I
Just a
don't know the
generic-
validity, those are
okay.
just some
examples,
models I
alright.
found online to throw in, and
Just
whether or not it's to scale, those VWs are probably.
They're tiny.
14,
they don't even make them anymore, I don't think.
no, they haven't stopped making them.
But they're all over Madison.
They are.
Addressing the point of if it was all brought forward, we would have 20 feet. If it was brought forward another 4 feet, we'd have about 21 or 22 feet to the sidewalk. So that would be enough for an average car to be able to get out of the garage and have sight lines.
sit in the garage, sit in the
But-
driveway and not impede the sidewalk.
Yeah, but the problem that you start to have then is you have no room to narrow down to a driveway. So. And it would cover up the windows.
Yeah.
I think that would. Mhm.
I was thinking about where it's gonna cover the scupper if it comes probably 3, maybe 4 feet there at most before it covers those windows.
Uh-huh. I think the scupper does drain into the new garage.
Yeah.
I guess my only comment, or I guess my clarification would be, I'm like, if it was like 20 feet or even 21 feet, like kind of like the minimum for the garage, I get there would be the storage and there may be some maneuverability around vehicles. There'd still be an empty bay, and there'd be additional room to park in the driveway. And why that's not a solution, and why a variance is even needed.
Well, we would still need the front yard variance. You just talking about the backyard.
Well, it's 28, right? So if you take 4 feet off both, if you take, if you get
Oh,
20 feet or even 21 feet.
20
of a
20
Small
feet,
variance.
20 feet is a very small garage. So, and as far as the I thought we did a good job of balancing the house with the garage en masse. If we start putting a smaller garage on it, might look like a funny appendage, but
And other things, like right now we have the recycle and the trash barrel inside the garage, so it's not sitting out front where everyone going by is looking, oh, look, there's trash barrel sitting there. And if you park in the driveway, it's like, why did you build a double garage if you're parking in the driveway and blocking the other car in?
so when I said that 20 feet is the minimum depth of a garage, that is a single car garage that you don't have to walk around another car, one car to get to another. So when you start talking about a double garage or more, you have to push that a little further so you can walk past one car to get to another, particularly in this situation where the entrance is on the side. So I have never, I've never designed a garage that is less than 24 feet in depth.
Okay.
For that reason.
Okay.
And that's what we approve.
Basically, yeah. Is there a reason why you want to move it forward instead of?
Well, I was thinking to maintain the length front to back, the back storage there to move the whole thing forward. So the
I
big
see
issue
what
is
you
it's 3 feet from that chain link fence in their backyard.
Gotcha.
And you want to make it 7 feet from their chain link fence. So that means the whole thing has to be shortened by 4 feet, or the whole thing has to be brought forward 4 feet.
And whether we.
And those neighbors actually looked at that. I pointed that out. I said, it'll be 3 feet from this chain link fence. That was before I was aware there was the 7 foot setback from there. I was working under the impression that it was 3 feet from the corner marker because it's a corner lot, not knowing that that was for unattached garages.
Well, you'd be requesting, obviously, if you decided to shift it forward, it would be a different request, because you're requesting the specific amount right now up front.
Mhm.
And that's what we're discussing tonight, and if you were to shift to the garage, it would be a different variance essentially that you're requesting.
Now you got a different front variance.
Would that bring it flush with the front of the rest of the building, or would it bring it
Not
further?
quite, I think it's 6 feet back.
Okay.
It's on one of the plans. But Thank you.
Sorry.
I didn't even thought about bringing a copy, I don't know.
The interesting thing was that when the back room was, family room was added on, which made it longer. Where it was added on, there was a corner window there that was then kind of closed up, and then just two front windows were put there, but you can still on the inside the room see a bit of the corner window. You brought the garage forward here, you can essentially kind of doing the same thing to this back room there as well.
Yes, it's 6 feet off the front corner. Which was close to the amount, I think it's 7 feet. Okay, so, yeah, this is 6 feet right there.
And that's practically at the window.
Inches.
Yeah, so you really can't bring
Yeah.
it.
And that was 7, and I felt, my initial thought was to line it up with that plane, but it did run into the window and it didn't felt too flat.
Yeah.
So, that's how I.
Yeah, I think that's 23 feet back right to that
Mhm.
room there. The farthest back,
Right, this is, actually, that's 20
That's-
from there to there.
yeah.
So we have a motion on the floor. All those in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
Street side setback.
Yeah, so you have the streets.
Street side setback,
Street
but
side
not,
setback.
so we take 4 feet off. Yeah,
To make it longer.
yeah, something, we'll discuss that.
Okay.
Okay.
So happy for you.
I want to drive by there now.
It doesn't look like it's gonna be till July or August now. before
I
anything
just want
gets
to drive
started.
by anyway and see it.
Yeah,
You guys, I think you're still on the contractor's timetable, right?
yeah.
Oh.
Are we all so?
Right.
You know, you sit in that back room, it's like, you almost have an enclosed back area. You got lilacs along the sidewalk, and then even on the corner, there's a locust taken down, but it goes to so honeysuckles around the corner, and then there's a big mulberry, which maybe you can get some mulberries to make crisp and stuff out of. It's a mess. It really is. When it comes down to it, it's a mess. But you kind of sit back there and you kind of have this little enclosed backyard that is kind of nice that if, you know, you put the garage and it's going to be opened up. We'll see all the way up to the streetlights then, but rather than parking out in the street, and getting plowed in.
The parking at an angle on the grass and.
Yeah. But it's kind of on some gravel right there.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
It's actually,
Okay, well, thank you for coming.
Thank you.
well, thank you for hearing it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, have safe holidays.
Yeah,
Thank
you
you.
too.
Thank you.
Thank you.
In terms of upcoming meetings, January 20th is the next one. I'm not aware of any applications at this point. Probably only a couple days left on that submittal deadline. So I'll keep everybody updated, but at this point, I'm expecting them to be canceled.
Do we have any updates?
I don't have anything specific.
Do I have to motion to adjourn?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned.
Who's the iPhone?
Thank you.